But those things account to about 1.7 million of our operational budget, and the rest is hard, just so that part's clear. The capital and other goes to zero. That is a reflection of the ending of the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force. There had been money that had been pulled over for this year to support the work of that task force as they came forward with proposals. Currently, that is proposed to be zeroed out. The task force will end in October. They, under their bylaws, extended the term of the task force for 6 months. The last day of the task force will be in October. That's that. I guess one other thing I want to note here is you see 27 staff. The other thing you see there are 47 staff next year is 2. 2 is clinical interns. And one thing I want to say is we have 2 fabulous clinical interns through NC Central School of Social Work. They graduated this May. I think they're going to be strong candidates. And I think they're interested, and I hope that they will apply and become part of our team. That's something that we want to continue. Our clinical interns work 24 hours a week, paid internships with us for the whole academic year. They work in our care navigation. They provide really invaluable support. That's also an excellent pipeline strategy for us. So we're really thrilled about that and glad that our budget includes the continuation of 2 paid interns. So budget highlights. Again, the most important line in this is the proposed budget moves all HARP programs, all 4, the citywide service, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. That means that our services will be available for every resident in the city of Durham. It will increase our ability to respond to an additional 11,000 resident-initiated 911 calls. And as I said earlier, it takes the number of calls that are eligible for HARP citywide from only being able to get to about 28% of those to 69%. So it's a big increase in the number of eligible calls that we are eligible for us to go to. In order to accomplish this, this is what the budget adds. It adds 4 new community response teams. It adds 3 new co-response teams, 2 more crisis call diversion counselors to work in the 911 center, 5 care navigation staff to support follow-up care and connection, 6 shift supervisors, and 2 administrative support positions in operations, data analysts, and business services analysts. And as I mentioned, the budget will also continue funding for the contracts that we have been managing this year, and since we began with Full City United, Deer, Project Build, and then 2 contracts with the district attorney's office. And I'll pause for questions.
Thank you so much for a great presentation. Open up for questions for our colleagues. Mayor Pro Tem, followed by Councilwoman Javier.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ryan, good morning.
Good morning.
You didn't tell us your bird name.
I should have introduced myself. Ryan Smith, Chief Chickadee.
Excellent. My pending bird name is pterodactyl. I haven't heard that from the committee yet. So.
It's coming.
Well, congratulations on just what is, I think, a transformative and wonderful jewel in the crown of our city. Like other initiatives, this one was poo-pooed by some people before we even had that. There were some folks who said we need to just load up on police and don't do this. On the other end, there were people who said we need to do this and not that. But I think that this department has made our government stronger. It's made Durham more humane. It has put us in a position as a government to increase and muscularize our toolbox and respond in a much more robust way to situations. I don't really have a question, but it's a commitment to you. And it stems from something personal, and I'll disclose that in a minute. I don't, as an American, I don't have a problem with the United States having the most powerful military on the planet. But I'm a bigger fan of the State Department. You know, I believe in diplomacy. I believe in nonviolence. I believe in peace. But I want the tools to be able to respond to any contingencies. And one of the things that we're charged with doing this job is to think about the unthinkable. That if you're going to be in this job, you have to think about the unthinkable and want to be in a position to respond to the most dire, dramatic situation. But also, if a brother or sister needs to talk to somebody, you don't need a gun and a badge for that, and the ability to do that as well. And this department has put us in that position. I'm also excited about the cooperation and the joint participation from our police department and our other co-respondents, because I think there were some who wanted to frame this as either or. that one would be antagonistic to the mission to the other. That has not happened. What has happened is precisely what should happen. The mutual value and the mutual benefit, the importance of having a robust toolbox as a government has, you guys were insulated from the chatter and just made it happen. And now that we have data, I'm so glad that this conversation is rooted in data and that we see that it works. So congratulations on that. Finally, my commitment is to make sure this department has what it needs when it needs it. My commitment also is not to critique you if the day should come where you have empty positions, because it's hiring is coming. So if you have positions in your org chart, I'm not going to suggest that somehow suggests that, we don't need them there or you're not meeting your mission, because we know what the hiring situation is in the United States. I don't talk about my personal life much, but I have a special needs nephew who lives here in Durham. He has had many contacts with the Durham Police Department before your department existed and before they knew who he was. The response was always humane. It was kind. I was very pleased to hear about that. Eventually, the officers found out who he was and his connection to me, and I'd get calls and texts. But before that happened, the response was humane and kind and gentle. When the HEART team came along, he's had several interactions with the HEART team. When I did my ride along with you guys that day and spent the day with you, I spoke about my special needs family member, didn't name his name or anything, but the team knew and came up to me, the responders that had dealt with him. And I was almost broke a brother down there in your office. And I, as a resident, forget Mayor Pro Tem, forget being on this council, as a resident, as a neighbor, I just want to thank you and Madam Manager, you and the people that work for you for the work you do, for touching my life, my family's life, and for the thousands and thousands of other Durhamites who will be blessed by this and who will benefit from this, and for making us more Durham-like. This is who we are as a city. So I just want to congratulate you on the work. As long as I'm allowed to sit in this seat, you will have my support. This department will have whatever it needs, and just continue to do the good work. And this bird is very happy with what you're doing. So thank you, Madam Mayor. Best wishes, and I look forward to approving a budget that includes all of these things in it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Fabio.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning. Thank you for the great presentation. I just have a couple of questions for the care navigators. What types of services are you connecting them to?
It is based on the needs that they identify, and then we work as hard as we can to meet those needs. So, of course, housing is a common one, but that's the hardest. Everyone, it's no surprise to anyone here. But the needs of neighbors range. They are quite varied. I mean, as it's just an example of how varied it can be. One case that we worked on was a very complex case. It was a mother whose son, whose adolescent age son, was dealing with severe mental illness and psychosis, and was not getting the kind of care that they needed from other system providers. And our team worked for over 30 days to convene care team meetings with various providers to make sure that the son was able to receive the care that he needed and that his mom wanted for him. That was a lot of work, right? And that is working to stand in the gap, to advocate for neighbors with other system actors to make sure they get what they need. But it ranges. We actually have on our website a breakdown by need, a kind of percentage, but behavioral health needs are at the top, housing, food insecurity, it runs the gamut.
Thank you. And then my follow-up question, and maybe more not for today, but would just love to see, hear y'all's perspective, because what we know is that there are gaps in the system.
Mm-hmm.
So the work that you all do is critical, but if we don't have the resources to connect folks at the back end of it, right? So y'all are doing your job, but if there isn't the housing that's there, if there isn't the food security that needs to be there, then that becomes a problem, because we know that those are the folks who are just going to keep using the system. And so I think that having more conversations, and I know this is already happening with Housing for New Hope and others, because we know that housing, especially supportive housing, is becoming a big critical need that was already there and just been worsened over the last few years. So I look forward to those kinds of conversations, because I know that that's going to be critically important to y'all's success, but then just the success of Durham. And then I think the last question I have is maybe more of a manager question and not a you question, but with the task force winding down in October, you know, the allocated funds that we provided them with when their initial launch happened, will there still be those funds for the recommendations that they potentially provide? Or that they will provide?
So, and we do not know what those recommendations are. I will begin with that statement, and we do not know what the cost is. The response to your question is they are not included in this proposed budget. It was funding that because it was multi-year, it was being held as part of the fund balance. So if there are recommendations that this council approves and adopts and you seek to fund them as we have done in the past for partners, then we will bring that forward.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to say thank you to you and your team. I think the work you all have done is incredible. I have yet to see the, unfortunately missed the documentary, so I'm eager to see it. And I think this is some of the most impactful work that the city of Durham has done, and the acknowledgement we get across the country is people are very eager to learn from us. And at this point, I think we have the best program in the country.
I think we have one of the best. There's some great ones out there. I appreciate that. I do want to say on the documentary, there are 3 days coming in June that RTI is hosting at the main branch of the downtown library. They're looking at a couple of other locations across city. We'll work to get that out to the broader community, to all of you as well. In case you missed the first one, there'll be 3 dates in June coming.
Thank you, Councilman Freeman. Did you have a question? Thank you, Councilwoman Honey. Thank you. I did want to thank you as well. Just noting how incredibly heavy this lift was and just getting it up and going. I did want to first track back to find out. I'm not sure if I know who the assistant director of your department is. Just making sure.
Mr. Van.
Yes, and I did want to know specifically, I heard what the costs weren't, but I didn't hear what the current cost was. So your total operation costs for this fiscal year will be specific to without the contracts.
Specific to hard. If I were to go in and subtract 1.7 million from the operations line. Sorry, I just go to the, I don't have the right table in my notes. Let me pull it up real quick.
About 2.1.
It'd be 1.7 million minus for just our operations or personnel.
This is your operation.
Operations would be sorry, my eyes are really bad. 2.4 billion minus 1.7 million roughly. 700,000.
Okay, so 700,000. And I asked that question because I would like to get some feel of what it would look like to go to 18 hours as opposed to just 12. Just acknowledging if we could get above 70%, that would be helpful. I think 69 is right there. So whatever we can do to do that, that would be phenomenal. And then while we're making the change. And then I would also say that I did want to highlight that it is incredibly intuitive and fortunate that we have such a great university that does social work and a professor on the council who is spearheading trying to make that connection, and Dr. Jose Hyman. And I really am excited about what's next, noting as well as Mayor Pro Tem. I know a number of folks who have this type of contact, and it is always best to have a social worker engaged in that. I did want to ask how often because what I'm finding in my encounters is that the officer's the first on the scene in response. How often are the officers allowed to leave once the HEART team is there?
So there's 2 types of situations. If it's a community response team, then more often than not, it's just a community response team on scene. Occasionally we do have officers who check in on us and will attach themselves and come to a call, but predominantly it's just community response team. For co-response team, it is possible for the co-response teams to remain on scene and other law enforcement to disengage once it is safe and appropriate to do so. So it happens.
And I would just say that my specific question
Yeah.
is around figuring out what the safe and appropriate actually looks like, so that officers are aware of when they are allowed to leave. Because what I'm finding is they'll stay the entire time, and
Okay.
that's
Thank
not
you.
helpful, so, yeah. That's all, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
First of all, I want to say to the council, prior to me being appointed in May, this was already going, right? And so it was such a blessing to kind of come on the city council at the time that I did as a 30-year social worker and 18 to 20-year educator. And I want to say thank you to you, because one of the first things that I did, I think I saw you in the elevator and we were like, we got to connect to NCCU, and one of the first things I did was I started the NCC North Carolina Central pipeline to city interns and NCCU. And what I did was I found the people at NCCU were like myself that would be at the table to make things happen, because a lot of times there's barriers to making things happen. And I remember coming to the meeting, you coming to the meeting, your team, and I wanted 10, and I wanted 10 interns. You like, slow down, Dr. Hyman, and we were able to get those 2. And you were able to then connect with our director of field and our field department. And I just want to thank you, as I said to the assistant director this morning, my students who have graduated had a wonderful experience. They had one of the best experience in terms of field placement. First of all, I want to thank Manager Page too, because we're not used to getting paid interns at NCCU. And I want to thank I want to thank the city to be able to do that. Further, you also have been very instrumental in doing that. And I thank you, because a lot of our students are struggling with trying to get that experience and then, trying to work another job. So again, thank you for my students. The other thing I wanted to say is that I very much support this program. And I just want to thank your team, because you have highlighted what social workers do. Just from an evidence-based point, from looking at things from a person and environment frame. And I am just so blessed to be able to be on this council, to be able to be part of this, and to be able to see what social workers are really like. I've been teaching and doing this, but to actually see it and you to put it into fruition, I just want to thank you. I also want to thank you because I'm originally from New York. I had a goal to be on Broadway. I want to thank you for my cameo in the documentary. I appreciate that. And also, I know I wanted to look at the care navigation piece, in terms of me supporting all of the improvements and just the budget around this. And the care navigation piece is important to me also, because care navigation and you working with families after that, maybe even a 30-day period, also is prevention for crisis. And so sometimes you're wrapping those services around, you might have one initial person that was called on, but when you get in there and work with that family, you're wrapping services around the whole family. One of the things that I do want to suggest in terms of that making it work, you have a lot of barriers in systems, right? So we have the issue with housing, we have the issue with mental health. I'm also served as the vice president of the DSS board. We have a lot of barriers in terms of being able to link people to services. One of the things that worked for me many years ago when I was doing this work is actually having an advisory board committee that had the key people at different agencies at the table. So for example, if I needed to get one of my members from my case management program into a psychiatric treatment facility, I had the director of Bronx Psychiatric Systems at that table, and we were able to navigate and negotiate that. So what we did is we called it like an interdisciplinary team advisory board. And we had those key people at the table to help us navigate and negotiate through those systems. So I wanted to make that suggestion, because again, we're as good as how we are able to kind of knock down those barriers. And we know in Durham, we have those barriers, which is one of the things that our Councilmember Carvey talked about. But that was a suggestion that I just wanted to throw out. And I just thank you so much, because I get calls constantly from other cities. Recently as Raleigh, that they interviewed me to see, what were my suggestions in terms of being an educator and being now part on City Council social worker, to see how they could do this in Raleigh and other places. I also want to say that I actually put in a proposal for us to present this at Council on Social Work Education. I'm waiting for that, and I don't know if you know, but I put you down for that too. But I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much, because you have taken what we do as social workers and just put it out there in the light. And again, it's not about either or, it is about working together in collaboration and bringing everybody to the table. And you really are doing it from a theoretical lens, that person and environment, strength-based perspective, all those things that I teach you have been able to put it in the forefront. And again, I just thank you for, a lot of times I have these wonderful visions and I want to do A, B, C, and D, and Wanda will tell you all the time I'm in there like, can we do this? But you took whatever I asked and you tried to make it work. And I thank you so much for it. And you will continue to have my support and you will continue to have me in the community championing this and being at the table, and whatever I can do, please continue to reach out to me as your team does. I thank you so much. Keep up the good work. This is what we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we have some visitors in our community who come to look at our program. You didn't mention that in your presentation, so I thought I would give you an opportunity.
We do. Just this week, we had Cambridge, Massachusetts come down. They've started a community safety department. Their 2 first staff were here spending a couple of days with us. I've been exchanging emails with New York, Seattle, New Orleans. Anissa's was on a call yesterday with New Orleans, and well, yeah, the list goes on. Cities in North Carolina, but I don't want to name them because I'll look at them at their own pace. But it's an exciting time. We're part of a national movement, and we're in a position to be among the cities that are helping lead that work and supporting other cities in doing it, and we're fully committed to that. So.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank you for the presentation and for this work. It's really inspiring, and it's just really great that Durham is in a position to both provide the service to our residents and serve as a leader and like the state and the national level in building out this kind of work across the country. It's been really amazing to watch these programs take off over the last couple of years all over the country, and to know that the work that we've put in here in Durham is going to, not just help out our folks, but also help people all over the country. It's really exciting. I recently had a friend who's had a family member who was in crisis call me on my phone and like, how can we get them services from the HEART team? And so we looked at the map to see where HEART would come, drove him over there, and then called, and they came, and they helped him and did the follow-up. And I think that, we were able to do that, right? But being able to access this service anywhere in the city is going to make a huge difference. And and the expanded hours are great. I'm hoping that next year or the year after we can, continue to look more, expanding those hours more, in addition to adding more folks. I'm, hoping to see this kind of expansion from the department every year for the next few years, so we can get up to the point where every eligible call, my vision is every HEART eligible call can be responded to by a HEART staffer, that we're able to divert as many of those calls as possible into this kind of response. So excited to see this growing and want to continue to see it grow. And this is just really freaking amazing. So thank you. And thank you to your team and to all the folks who made this happen. I wanted to follow up with Javier's question about the funding for the Community Safety and Wellness Task Force. Could you give us a little more context as to why you're not recommending that funding to roll over again? I think I would like for there to still be some reserved funds for recommendations that are coming from the task force, and they've been operating for the last couple of years with the understanding that they would have a certain amount of funds to work with them. So I'm not excited about taking that away.
So just to be to be clear, anytime that funding is not spent, unless it's some type of capital project or is in a contract, essentially it goes into fund balance. What we have done in the past is, if there is something that we want to reserve fund balance for, we put that in the presentation, in the budget recommendation. You saw some of those items. I think it's about 13 million of those in this year's budget, but we do not have that currently reserved in fund balance. I'm not sure exactly what the dollar figure is, but you did allocate, I think it was prescriptions for repair. That was a interim recommendation that came forward. It was my understanding that the city, not knowing what the recommendation is going to be, It may not be a city expense, but it is, we certainly have the cash to do that, but it is not recommended to be reserved in fund balance at this time.
I think, so I would prefer that we do reserve it. I don't see it, like, it doesn't seem like anything's changed this year, other than, like, we were in the same situation last year, where we didn't really know what the recommendations were gonna be, or how much they were gonna cost. I feel like we made a commitment to the task force that they would have reserve funds, and I would rather keep them that way. And yeah, that's my position. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to sing in the choir, your praises. Thank you for giving us something to brag about. And when I mean you and your entire team and the efficiency of the services you're providing and how this entire initiative has been integrated in our first responders apparatus. I just really appreciate how well you guys have done it. This did start before my time on council, and just really appreciate the leadership of the previous council, getting it kicked off. I think what I appreciate most is we can have a both and as it's necessary in the community. And I think Durham is as messy as the sausage making process can be. I think we are producing quite the entree here. So thank you. And the only criticism I have is you are not forewarning people how much tissue you're going to need when they see that documentary. So it's very well produced and really good. So thank you guys. Bring your napkins.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to briefly address my colleagues' concern about the remaining funds for the task force, and what the understanding was when we empowered the task force. The $1 million was attached to them before we even had bylaws. Nobody knew what the $1 million was going to be used for. I was at the meeting, I was there. So I think it's more of a hope what would happen with the money than an understanding. And if the understanding was, if that was the understanding about the money, that understanding was developed and came into fruition after we had empowered the panel and after we had passed the bylaw. I think the money basically it was used it was there for whatever the output was going to be, and that was kind of a nebulous designation. But I will say this, I think the staff is in order, following regular order, in reverting money that wasn't spent. But I'll make this commitment. If the task force, like any other group, brings forth recommendations, notwithstanding holding over that money, that pass muster with the council and that we think is sensible and has utility for our city, I'll gladly vote to fund it. We don't have to hold this money over in order to do that. Again, I didn't know what the $1 million was for. We had enough votes to give them $1 million before they had a list of what they were going to do. Then, and it worked then, and now I'm committed to whatever, we did the prescriptive prescription for repair. It was a good idea, we funded it. And if this money goes away, if they come forward with other good ideas, I'll be glad to fund that too. But I think the staff is in order, following their regular processes when it comes to remanding money back. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And I'm going to try to chime in on that conversation. But first, I wanted to ask you about downtown aggressive panhandling. As Councilman Williams know, we were asked to meet with our downtown business owners on a couple of occasions with that specific issue. And I don't know if he's been contacted, since I know you all were intimately involved in that. I have not. It's been relatively silent on that issue. So just wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to that and give us an update on how things are going on in the downtown area.
Thank you, Mayor Neal. So we were part of the meetings that you convened with actors in the court system and others to express those concerns. We have since been working closely with a list of names was identified of neighbors who were most commonly bringing about concerns downtown and second degree trespass. These neighbors were in and out of our jail multiple times. One of the things that we've done coming out of that meeting is build a partnership with jail mental health staff. With both Gudrun Farmer and Sheriff Burkhead support and leadership. We meet regularly. Our team, our care navigation team will go into the jail because the neighbors that we're talking about are still in and out of the jail often. We will meet with them when they're in the jail to begin to build rapport. Upon release, we're notified and we meet those neighbors and can continue to work with them. We've developed a relationship with CJRC. They've identified someone who can provide long-term case and care management. And we work to get them connected up with that case manager. These are neighbors whose needs, I cannot stress enough, are so complex, right? They're so complex because the neighbors that we're mostly talking about are unsheltered or unhoused, have diagnosed, many of them diagnosed severe persistent mental illness, that may require medication that can be difficult to maintain when you don't have stable housing, have no community support. I don't have family in the area. And Councilman Caballero, you asked one of the things that we need is part of that work that we've been doing with these neighbors. That one of the things that our team talks a lot about as an identified need is more permanent supportive housing that can address very complex needs where you can have medication and treatment on site. We do need more of that. We do not have enough of it. And I think that until we have some of those things, for some of these neighbors, we will do the best we can, and it will still be a very difficult to address all those needs and maintain stability. But it is a step in the right direction that our team has a list of familiar neighbors that we're working closely with, that we're building rapport with. We've developed this partnership with jail mental health. We go into the jail, we meet with them. We're learning about their histories from jail mental health staff, which is very helpful. The medications they need, so we can help them maintain medication, connecting them with a case manager. We continue to maintain and building a strong partnership with Downtown Durham Inc., who will notify us if there are neighbors that they see, in a way that can preempt the need for a 911 call. If they see a neighbor who they feel might need to be checked on, our team will go. We self-initiate a welfare check. If there's someone downtown who may appear to be in need or to get ahead of something like that. So those are the things we're doing. I think that they are helping some, but I also think that HEART alone can't address some of those fundamental needs. But I do think that the work that the team is doing in building trust and in showing up and meeting those neighbors and getting them, doing the best we can to connect them to needs and care is having an impact.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was a very, we had some contentious meetings around all of this. Because it seems like a lot of the work that was being asked was not really in the purview of the city. But you all jumped in, and I can only attribute that to the silence that we are now hearing is a result of a lot of the work that you all did in that arena. So I want to personally thank you for that. And I know Councilman Williams and I particularly are glad that we are not having to be a part of those very contentious meetings, but we stand ready to support you and to further what you all are doing in Durham. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mayor.
Just briefly, Mayor, as you were talking specifically about that, that period of time when you had pulled that group together, they wanted to acknowledge both Deputy City Manager Ferguson as well as Durham police members who were part of that team. I know you asked Ryan specifically, but just to go on record for who all was involved.
And they were definitely, it was a real city effort. So my apologies to the chief and her staff and Bo, they were there and we were all sitting around those tables and it's been silent. So no news is good news in this arena, I think, but we stand ready to further our relationship with all of the partners. So just let us know if you need us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Sorry. So we're gonna claim these 47 positions. And so when we claim those, I was just can you just talk to me about like the, I guess, onboarding in terms of like the training, because it's gonna be a lot to have to train them and then trying to get those out, and the peer support training, because there's a lot of people who already have started asking like, where do I get that peer support training to be able to, apply?
We're going to be ready to post jobs at the earliest date that we can, which will either be June 21st, which we can't fill to July 1st, but certainly by July 1st, we'll have positions posted. We're planning on trying to fill the positions over 3 academies. 2 academies if we can to challenge ourselves, but if we need a third, we'll be prepared to have a third so we can bring in 3 waves of cohorts. We will likely expand citywide service prior to having all those staff. We have not yet set a date, but we will be communicating that out, whether it be sometime early fall, probably that we move citywide, even though we'll have to grow into having all the staff ready to do it. And then when we're at full capacity, every day we'll have roughly 3 community response teams available citywide, the meet teams. So yeah, happy to answer more questions, but
So just in terms of like the peer support training,
Right.
because a lot of people have asked me already, like, where can I get that peer support training to be ready to apply?
to go ahead and get this certification.
Right. Mhm.
So one thing is, that certainly makes people more competitive if they already have it. We will, if people have the right experience, we will hire people and then as part of their onboarding, put them through and pay for their certification.
Okay.
I don't know if Avon or Lee speak to places we recommend people to go to get their certification. Sorry, just for anyone listening out there.
Right.
Good morning, everyone.
You want to come up here, sorry.
Good morning, my name is Avon Adediaco, one of the clinical managers. There are several places within North Carolina that a person can register and become peer certified. UNC has a program. I don't know the website off the top of my head. Also NC Hope has one. And there is a third that is escaping me at the moment, but I can definitely send you an email with all of those details.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Not to put you on the spot. It's just that I get a lot of calls where I want to get this certification so that their application could be, considered even more so high. So that's why I was just asking.
No, that's fine. No
And I think the other question too, and I think you've kind of fixed this, Ryan, but when you were looking at the positions before, we talked about having the LCSWA be a requirement. And I think you did that. And I appreciate you doing that because again, I'm doing so many references right now, referrals for my students who have graduated to get their license. And so it takes a little time. So I know that I think you allowed the A to be one that could be hired. And so I thank you for that. I appreciate it. Which is your licensed clinical social work provisional, for those who don't know, it's the LCSWA. And before we were just, I think, hiring LCSWs, and then I think you added the A, which is the provisional, right? So I appreciate you doing that. I know there was conversations that we had, so that will also open up the pool for more people to be hired. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Smith, for a great department. I did want to address the budget issue, and I take off my hat as mayor now and put that on my hat as the former chair of the Racial Equity Task Force. There were 18 of us that sat around the table for over 2 years and produced a 60-page report with many recommendations. I need to go back and look and see how many we've actually put forward, but we were allocated no funds. I remember sitting up at night personally writing part of that report along with many members of the task force. So I just say that when the community safety task force was allocated $1 million, there were a lot of unhappy people about that because there was an issue of equity. You had none and then $1 million. So I say that to say that if you are going to set aside money for any task force, that it be general for all task force, that you not make that kind of unequal allotment. So if there are anyone that are going to be set aside for recommendations to go forward on an inner task force, it should be general to all task force. So I don't think we need to move on it today, but I just ask that, having sat in that seat and watched that in amazement, that we spent a lot of time and we were allocated not anything. Can't do that. That's not equitable. So now we move to our next presentation from our police chief, I believe. And we're gonna come out of order a little bit, so Mr. Johnson, I think you may be after the fire chief. So we'll have our police report next, then we'll have our fire chief, and then we will come back. Thank you.
So, good morning, Madam Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, my council, manager, city manager Paige, and staff that are here today. So want to just present a little bit to you about the police department's budget as well as performance measures. So currently, the police department, we are at 674 for FY23 FTEs, projected 672 for this upcoming budget year. That is, we are removing 2 vacant sworn positions from one of our districts as a part of the budget process. I also do want to just note that we had a recent department reorganization, both to be able to maintain the level of the service that our community has been used to and also expecting within our violent crime teams. And so we had to do some reorganization there. We also proactively had our sworn positions moved to reclassify to non-sworn, about 6 positions, so that we could get some staffing to our forensic services division. So our CSIs that go out on calls requiring processing, scene processing, as well as to our firearms unit that processes all of those casings we recover and any firearms that we recover, and our digital, and then also our latents, I believe. So we proactively did some shifting with our total sworn and non-sworn FTEs. And then we also committed to adding 3 sworn positions. This was prior to budget. We moved 3 sworn positions over to community safety, to our HARD program, to support what they are doing within co-response. And so we are working proactively to fill those positions. Those will actually be priority filled. Despite what our staffing is, we will fill those positions as soon as we can. I do want to shout out HART for sitting through and helping us with our selection process. They have been a part of that process in identifying officers that will be onboarded to the team. So performance measures. So this is, last week I talked about our quarterly performance and our quarterly crime numbers based upon a calendar year. These are a little bit different for me because it's based upon a fiscal year. So the graph that you see on the left does measure the annual number of violent crimes per 100,000, and the right, it's the annual number of aggravated assaults and robberies and how that bodes out by districts. Our violent crimes per 100,000 through the 3rd quarter, year to date, we were at 458. We are estimating that we will end our fiscal year at 625. So our target is 700. And if we look at previous years, we have seen a slight reduction year over year in the number of our violent crime rate per 100,000. So for our aggravated assaults, it looks like depending upon our district, so each district, varies in size. District 4 is our southeast district. That's one of our largest districts. And so it also ironically is where we happen to see a lot of ShotSpotter activations. So when we look at District 4, we do see that there is a higher number of aggravated assault and robberies by district. They are currently the highest going into our 3rd fiscal quarter. So next set of performance measures our annual violent crime rate. So our clearance rate, and then also our quarterly clearance rate. So we stand right now at a 30% clearance rate and are estimating to end our year at 32%. Our target is 50%. I did ask staff to go back, and now that, and I've said this last week, just a reminder, now that FBI has changed how they actually report clearance rates on a national basis, I asked staff to go back and look at how we have been reporting over the years, and if our target still needs to be, if that target is still relevant based upon how clearance rates are figured by the FBI. And so based upon that, we are updating our target to 33% for this upcoming fiscal cycle. And that again is based upon last 3 to 5 years data, and then taking into also consideration FBI clearance rate numbers. So the national data from 20 and 21 is also figured into this. If we look at our actuals for fiscal year, we would see that our clearance rates are actually going up in our clearance rates, which means that our officers or investigators are clearing these cases at a higher rate year over year. I would say that our violent crime clearances have been affected, as we all know in this room, by several things. One, primarily being our victim witness cooperation. It is not, we receive notifications nightly about gunshot wounds, and certainly more than what is notified for counsel. But we will then compare how many of those, if the victims survive, are they cooperating? Very rarely do they cooperate, very rarely. Our witnesses, even rarer. So again, that the fact that we are able to clear at the rate that we are clearing, means that investigators are working as quickly and hard as they can to be able to come up with a potential suspect. So Duke University has been doing some research, and it indicates that the crimes that we have are rarely solved when a solvability factor is missing. So, and then we also have a rise again in firearm related cases. So now, we talked about this last week. Again, these charts look at our average response time to all of our priority 1 calls, that's in minutes, and then by district, what does that look like? Again, and you'll start to see some similarities from district to district. The larger the district, typically, the longer the response time. And so we want to measure this goal in order to ensure that our average response time of 5.8 minutes or less, that we are meeting that. We are not meeting that to all of our priority calls. So the graph on the left will shows that through the 3rd quarter, we are averaging 6.7 minutes. That is to priority 1 calls. And we are estimating that we will end the year 54 seconds off of our target. And we do estimate that will increase if we aren't proactive internally with reallocating our staff and making some tough decisions internally to put more officers back onto uniform patrol. The graph on the right, it shows our breakdown by response times by district. So again, District 4, highest aggravated assault robbery rate, also happens to be the highest rate for response time. And that could be any number of things: geographically, where are the calls happening, what does our staffing rate look like in that district, and also how many priority 1 calls we're getting. Are we getting more priority 1 calls in one district than we are another? So here's our sworn vacancy rate. And so our measure for this is to have a monthly average sworn vacancy rate of 14% or lower. So that's what we have set our target at. That is what our target will continue to be at. And through the 3rd quarter, we are averaging a vacancy rate of 20.7%. And we will probably end the year at 20.9% or higher. Our resource allocation table, so you've seen this from other departments, just a couple of differences in our proposed 23-24 table, and then the adopted 22-23 table. So our personnel shows a 3.3% increase. So this is roughly due to, it's $2.3 million increases due to the annual merit raises for personnel, as well as the increase in benefits that we have seen over the last fiscal year. Operating does show a 1.8% decrease due to the removal of the 1-year shot spotter evaluation contract. And we did make an addition of an add to base for all of our rental spaces. So our rent increases in those spaces. So thanks substations that we have. And then 3.1% increase in transfers represents a $2,000 increase in our grant matches. So that's related to all of our task force overtime. So we have a very robust federal task force team. It's one of the largest in the state. And so that goes towards their overtime. So one thing that was not placed in here, I did want to talk about is our grants with our resource allocation for our grants. So as you know, we really do depend heavily on our grant processes. So shout out to Fiscal, Keisha, Etheridge with our Fiscal. She does a great job, that entire team. So we did have an 11.8% decrease in personnel services. And this is in reduction for the HIDA overtime. So that's our high intensity drug trafficking area overtime funding. So think DEA. And that does change from year to year. And then we had a 2.3% increase in our overtime from our our operating expense from our national PAL grant. So we are committed to maintaining PALs and our services to our kids in the community, and also expanding those services as well. And then our SAKI grant, we had a reduction in FTEs from our SAKI grant from 4 to 1, and that's just a result of the end of funding for 3 of those positions in the SAKI grant. We still have maintained the high level of work that we are doing, processing our cold cases and being committed to that. So some budget highlights, some significant initiatives are focused around hiring and retention, our 30 by 30 initiative, our risk-based policing, which is essentially our RTM, our risk terrain modeling initiative that we started up, and are looking at alternative ways in which we police our communities, our supplemental staffing, and our community outreach. So we will do, we'll kind of look at hiring and retention. Staff has worked very hard to come up with some innovative ways in which to hire new officers and also retain our officers. We recently implemented a recruiting, lack of a better word, our officer referral program to recruit more folks into the Durham Police Department, because our officers are our best recruiters, all of our officers. There's some financial incentive for that. And so officers are receiving financial incentive of $5,000 up to 2 referrals. Now, it's just not given, right? So there has to be, it's phased in, and at every milestone that recruit comes into the academy, the recruit graduates, successfully completes and graduates. And then after the first year, there is a dollar amount that is issued to the officer or the non-sworn member that refers someone into the agency. And we have seen an increase because we are tracking that. We are tracking how the effect is on actual recruiting, if it is beneficial. If we find that it's not beneficial, we will no longer do it. And so we are actively tracking that through benchmark work with some Power BI data. So we have implemented an program called Interview Now. And it's a cell phone app that, these newer generations, they're tied to their cell phones and they love a QR code. They love to be able to do things electronically. And it really does help us it helps us get applications in quicker and processing our applications. And it also helps whenever we are out, our teams are out on the road and contacting these potential candidates and putting them in contact quicker with a recruiter. We did upgrade or update our recruiting survey. So this will help us really pinpoint why applicants are choosing to not apply to the Durham Police Department. So we've had a few applicants that kind of right there as we are in the middle of the background process, or we are getting ready to seek them for an academy. They have elected not to continue forward with the Durham Police Department. And then we will try and get an idea as to why, and was there something in the actual hiring process? Did it take too long? Was it too arduous? Is there too much paperwork, or did you just find a better agency, or in their minds is a better agency? We know who the best agency is. Our 30 by 30 initiative work, getting more, recruiting more women into our profession. Women play a vital role in law enforcement. And so we want to continue to really push those efforts to meet our goal. We've increased attendance at female specific hiring events at Meredith College. They've been great partners. Also partnering with North Carolina Central University. We've attended Women's Empowerment, had a great time there, as we always do. We've also applied for federal grant funding to provide funding for Women's Empowerment series that we are actually going to be doing that focuses on both recruiting and retention, scheduled for 2024. So we're looking forward to that. Jason Shees, I'm sure you all know Jason Shees. Analytical services manager. He is constantly bringing great stuff to us, great programs, initiatives to the team, and in an effort to really streamline and make more efficient how we serve our community. And so through the risk terrain modeling, it's written here risk-based policing, but essentially it uses data to identify not just where we have crime occurring, but why, based upon environmental risk factors. So the great part about this is that we really are able to work with other departments within the city of Durham in order to improve our communities. We are working with Durham Parks and Rec at Long Meadow Park and seeing what we could do to reduce the crime that's happening there and also increase the safety of that particular park in our district. Our supplemental staffing, we continue to work, provide our supplemental staffing. It has been tremendously beneficial. Yesterday in particular, our raw number staffing without our supplemental, we had 48% staff. And then supplemental, it brought us to 59%. Every now and again, we will hit 70% or 80%, but we hover with supplemental staffing about 59–60% staffing, depending on the squad and depending on whether it's a day or night shift. It was extremely busy yesterday, especially with everything that's happening in our schools. It does pull our resources. And then just a highlight of some of our community outreach. We had a great, every police academy, community police academy is great. So I'm not going to isolate this one, but we continue to have really great community police academies. We are thrilled to be able to continue to offer that and host that. We take our community leaders or community members through ride-alongs, use of force simulators. We introduce them to the HEART team. And because we think that's a very important part of the work, hopefully we can recruit some to the HEART team, even if they're not interested in becoming police officers, but certainly through the HEART team. And then our PALS League, we have refocused our efforts with our PAL League and started to stagger how often we are participating and hosting different efforts across the city so that we can put more officers into the program and therefore serve more of our kids. And so I will close there.
Thank you so much, Chief. I did want to just ask Dave before I turn it over to my colleagues, if you would kind of give us an outlook of what the districts are, District 1 through 5, and kids, so there are lots of people who don't know what police district they're in or who their district commander is. Just wanted to kind of orient us in that space if you would.
Perfect. So I will be 50 this year, so it's gonna take me a minute to think, so hold on.
Okay.
Just, and if any of y'all would like to come up, come on up.
Wow.
I get it.
I was trying to hint,
I get it. I
come
get
on, it takes a village, so
it.
district
I have to try to figure out, I'm still trying to figure out what my district is too, so, you know.
I still have to run through my kids' names until I get it. So District 1 is our eastern part of Durham, and our captain there is Captain Zepeckis. Oh, who wants to introduce
The best,
The best.
the best.
Oh, don't tell him.
Good morning, my name is Jermaine Jackson. I'm the Assistant Chief over Field Operations, Zone A, which consists of District 1, 2, and 3. As the chief said, District 1 is ran by Captain Zepeckis. Lieutenant English is his co-commander over there. District 2 is led by Captain Pyatt, and that's going to be Northern Durham, out towards Wilbraham, Ladder Road and whatnot. His assistant commander is Lieutenant and Lieutenant Rogers, Andrew Rogers. And District 3, which is West Durham, out South Point, Old South Square. That's District 3, and that's run by Captain Pinnaker and Lieutenant Fitzgerald.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, I'm Mark Clancy. I'm in charge of Zone B. And Zone B, we have District 4, which is commanded by Captain Minor and Lieutenant Garcia. And that is, like she said, one of the biggest districts in the city. And it's even growing because it's going out toward the Briar Creek area in Morrisville. So we see a lot of growth there. District 5 is the downtown district, which is commanded by Captain Bond. And she has 2 lieutenants, Lieutenant De La Cruz and Lieutenant Van der Water.
Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Walter Tate, Assistant Chief Investigative Services. Criminal Investigation Division has Captain Johnny Frederick as commander, Lieutenant Ronell Hinton as the lieutenant, and Lieutenant Bond as another lieutenant for our property crimes. Our Organized Crime Division is headed by Daniel Kujak. His lieutenant is Lieutenant Bradley Fry, and they do all of our organized crime gang, drugs, SWAT team, things of that nature. Our forensic services is headed by Captain Monk, and they do all our on-scene crime scene investigations and late prints, which
Monk.
I'm sorry, there's 2 bots. Yes, Demetrius Monk, not Lawanda.
Thank you.
So we have another assistant chief, David Anthony. He's over at administrative services. But these 4, one of them will be your next deputy chief, not to replace Deputy Chief Joseph Kelly. No one can replace Joseph Kelly, but certainly to become next deputy chief.
I'll open it up to our colleagues. Thank you to my colleagues. Thank you. Any questions for the chief? Councilwoman Goodman.
Thank you, just the one. I appreciate the breakdown and specifically the chart here. By response or average response time, it probably would be helpful to kind of spell out how large those district differences are. I'm jokingly saying the Beckett is the best, but it's probably really smaller in comparison.
Yes.
So if you have 100,000 versus 500,000,
Right.
or 50, yeah, like just how, if you could include that in those types of charts, that would be helpful.
Anybody else have any questions for our chief?
And I would just add, you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
So Mayor Pro Tem, followed by Councilman Williams, and we will pass it on to Councilwoman Harmon, and that will be without interruption.
Chief, it's good to see you. All good to see the command staff. Thank you for a great report. Thank you for the work you're doing. That also in your department is being monitored by other cities and other municipalities and asking how we do things here in Durham. So I want to congratulate you on that. I have a very quick question, and I really want to parrot when folks have asked me. I've done many ride-alongs with you folks, and I've learned things on those ride-alongs, and I can perfectly try and explain things to residents, citizens. But while you have the microphone, here's a question I'd like you to address. Why do so many units respond to what people think are simple things? Like you'll see, well, they got 9 cop cars out here for, you know, 1 person, or 12 police officers for, you know, you guys should be doing things in the other parts of the city. And one of the things I learned is I remember one ride along in particular, how quickly things just escalated. You thought it was one thing and that officer almost became, I won't say overrun, but it changed very, very quickly. The number of people that he thought he was dealing with. Tell us why so many, it seems like so many units respond to what from a layperson's point of view seems to be a rather routine, whatever that means, call.
So a lot of it really does depend on what information do we get when the person calls 911. What information are they giving to the dispatcher? What the dispatcher is also hearing. So if there's a disturbance call, then the protocol certainly makes it a higher priority. So it becomes from a 2 to a priority 1 if there's an active disturbance, any weapons or someone says, well, I think I see a knife, or I think they have a gun or something like that. A lot of that really does depend on what that call taker says to the person that's actually taking that call and putting it in the system before dispatching it. Call type is a determinant as well. Within 911 communications, there is an actual dispatch protocol. So based upon what type of call it is, there will be a dispatch, an appropriate dispatch. So there might be for a house alarm, there will be 2 officers dispatched. And that's just a part of protocol. Now, if an officer arrives to a scene and it's a traffic collision and other officers hear, okay, it's a major intersection, then we need to have more officers there. So they will a lot of times proactively go because they know that you're going to need some sort of traffic control. If the officer on a traffic stop, if the officer stops 1 car and it's 1 person in 1 car and that person gets out of the car and you hear the officer saying, stay in your car, then most likely you're going to have other officers that are going to go. Because unfortunately, nothing is ever routine for us. But we know that the worst can happen at any time, but we don't go into it thinking the worst is going to happen. A lot of it is being driven by what our call taker sends to us and our protocol.
Thank you, as always. Appreciate your service and the men and women under your command. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Good morning.
Hi, good.
Briefly, just wanted to say thank you also, as I did with the Community Safety Department, for you all's efficiency in working together and giving us something to brag about. I know, police and public safety can be, a pretty hot topic almost anywhere you go. But I think it'd be a wake-up call if folks drove out to rural North Carolina and see the treatment that happens out there. I think it'll validate a lot of the national conversation around police or anti-policing. With that in mind, I just really appreciate how you guys actually function in our city. My brother is currently serving time because he didn't have his license at 3 a.m. on a back road in Pine Tops, North Carolina. Road stop. Like, who does that? So I just appreciate you guys being community servants, not gotcha traps and unnecessarily imposing these setbacks on folks' lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you? I have a couple of questions. I know before in one of your presentations, you talked about the test for the recruitment, and I think you were looking at kind of revamping the test and just wanted some follow-up on that.
Yeah, so I know that we lengthen the time to take the test. So instead of, and because I think I'd said that I tried to take it myself and I just stopped. One, because I worry where I need to be, but two, because I just didn't want to feel defeated. But I knew there's no way that I could answer that question in the time. We did lengthen the time. We increased it to allow our candidates ample time to be able to answer and process the questions. We also started administering the questions and that actual test before they take their physical fitness portion. So physical exhaustion equates to mental exhaustion. And, we found out very quickly that was helping, those changes did help. Now, we have been looking at other options and working with human resources in order to find a more appropriate exam. And so I just want to appreciate human resources for working with us on that.
Thank you for that follow-up. The other question is, in terms of, like, where do you think you're getting the highest level of your recruits from? Like, is it from other places? Is it from, is there like an area where you say like, okay, this is where I'm seeing an influx of people applying from?
Do I have anybody from admin? Yes. Well, Assistant Chief Administrator, Deputy Chief Administrator.
Good morning, Deputy Chief Bishop with Police Department and over Admin Services. So we don't have I would say a generic area where we get all our applicants from. The majority of applicants do have some type of knowledge of the Durham area is what brings them here. We are getting a few from up north that come down just to change of scenery from northern to the southern part, but we are recruiting in different areas. Sometimes we do have a metric that we're using that we use for our cell phones. So we're hitting, if we see a lot of Google or people are searching up Durham, then we have had some luck in the New York area of getting some applicants down here.
And before you leave, some people have said to me that people are not applying because of the gun violence in Durham. Just want you to, can you speak to that? Do you feel like that is something that's?
We have not been given, no recruit has given us that as a reason why they're not applying with her.
Thank you.
Well, before she sits down, I do want to say, okay, I am recruiting. So I do want to say that Deputy Chief Bishop, she and I went through the same academy together. And she's also one of our very few female firearms instructors on the department, in the history of the department. So she's going to get me later. But, yeah.
And I just want to say thank you, Chief, for your leading and your service. Before on council, you spoke a year or 2 years ago. You spoke at my leadership course that I teach. And one of the things that my students, my MSW said was like, she don't act like she's a chief, right? Now that's not good. I mean, it's good or bad, but I'm just saying, the point was that they just felt like not only were you a leader, but you were very transparent. You were leading by example. And so I just want to thank you for continuing that. I want to thank you for your team, because every time I see them, they have smiles on their faces, and that's good, because they obviously have the passion. So again, I just want to say thank you for your just humility, and thank you for leading by example, and thank you for your team. I appreciate you.
If I did want to ask you about one thing that seems to be a really hot topic, and I think we talked about it a little bit at at our meeting a couple of weeks ago. ATVs. On Sunday, I had an encounter. I don't know if there's anybody in this room who has not had an encounter with the young people who are driving or riding ATVs. And my encounter was a little scary. I was at the corner of Holloway Street at that main intersection in Wellens Village going towards town. And they came through on both sides of that divide. There was a trooper with them, following them, who had activated his blue lights. But I did see those cars that you have talked about that are kind of blocking so that they can come through. And he was, and I followed your advice. I called 911 and they called the trooper, and the trooper indicated that he was trying to corral them. And he was kind of moving them through traffic. They then circled around. I ran into them again, and he was actually corralling him, and I was assured that he was okay. The council received an email maybe about 2 days ago from a citizen saying that we are really not doing anything and our police, we are gambling with lives. This is a problem and what are we doing about it? And they wanted to know, and I'm always surprised sort of at the lack of knowledge as to how our government is structured, that we are a policy-making body, and we don't call you and tell the chief to do anything at all, that you are actually on the auspices of the city manager, and there are a couple of layers. And so I just wanted you to speak to what your team is out there trying to do. I don't know that there was any other thing that could have been done in that incident. The trooper was obviously there trying to do his job. I did my job as a citizen, but short of jumping out of my car and running to try to corral them myself, I don't know what else that we could do. So I would ask that you spend a couple of minutes, or how long you like, to just try to walk us through what our behavior should be when we encounter these groups and what we're trying to do to make sure that these young people have a safe place to ride if they so desire.
So, yeah, so I'll start by saying this. And this was something that came up when I first got here and started to experience the ATVs and the motorcycles and things like that. There has, and this is to everybody that's listening as well, there has never been a directive from this body, from the manager's office, or any leading body in the city of Durham that said, Durham Police Department, do not stop these dirt bikes. Don't take any law enforcement action. Don't do anything, just let them go. So I'm not sure where that came from, but I have never found anything that I can put my hands on, nor has my staff that have been here. There has never been that directive. What I will say is that when that happens, just as you did, it's let them have that roadway. Let them have that roadway. Do not try and take actions into your own hands, make the 911 call. Most often they will have a cover, they will have a vehicle in front, a car in front or a car behind is what I've kind of seen, block cars. And try and get tag license plate numbers from those block vehicles. We have got something in the works for them. We've got something special, and if any of you are listening, we do. So we've got a multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional operation in the works for them. And we do have our district attorney at the table as well. And she is committed as well to helping enforce and stop this kind of behavior.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
appreciate you, and I appreciate your hard work and that of your team. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, would you like for the fire chief to go next? Our fire chief will come, and then we will have a brief break after our fire chief presents before we go to Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, they have been such a long time. Yeah, I ain't been on that's when they're every day. Hey, Chief.
Hey there. Good afternoon, everyone. Or I'm sorry, good morning, everyone. I think it's still morning. Yes. Good morning, Madam Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and the rest of our city council. My name is Bob Zoldos, and I have the pleasure of serving as your fire chief and leading the Durham Fire Department. On behalf of the 430 women and men of the Durham Fire Department, I'd like to take this time to thank you for setting aside some time for us today. I'd also like to thank our city manager, DCM Ferguson, interim director Christina Reardon from budget, and all the budget staff for their in-depth analysis and strong work in this process. I've asked 3 members of the department staff to join me today. I want to introduce them real quick. We have with us our Chief of Emergency Operations, Deputy Fire Chief Jim Cole. Our Chief of Planning Administration, Assistant Chief Brian Eaton. And our Strategic Planner, Maria Radman. During FY 22, your fire department ran 31,474 incidents, which resulted in 54,286 individual apparatus runs. That volume of incidents is a 38% increase over the previous year. This includes 19,873 EMS incidents, which required 23,964 individual apparatus runs. The volume of EMS incidents increased over 48% compared to the previous year. To be fair, the previous year we did throttle back our EMS responses due to COVID exposure, and we're trying to limit crew exposure working with our partners in EMS. So far in this fiscal year, your fire department has run to date 27,797 incidents with 58,676 apparatus runs. This includes 18,625 EMS incidents. Your fire department is an all hazards first responder agency that responds to fires, emergency medical calls, technical rescue incidents, hazardous materials emergencies, and all other manner of emergency calls. Your fire department operates out of 23 facilities, including our headquarters, warehouse, maintenance, and training buildings. And recently, you may be aware that your fire department headquarters staff moved back into Fire Station 1, right across the street. We moved back into a new place, which sounds sort of strange, but we actually occupied that as our headquarters since 1964, and we vacated it 25 years ago. So we moved back in, we recycled the space, as it were. It's nice to be downtown in the core of the city. It makes us a little more, we're easier to get over here, and I think it's been a great place for us. But really, the reason we did it is to make more room in our training academy. We needed that space back and to expand what we do there. Your fire department operationally serves out of 19 stations, which are divided into 4 battalions or service management areas. Each day, your fire department staffs 25 heavy vehicles. These include fire engines, ladder trucks, and our 1 heavy rescue company, which is assigned across the street or located across the street. We also operate 3 squad companies, 5 operational chiefs, and several service or specialty units. One important note that I just must share here, during the pandemic, we, like all fire departments, had to take some support vehicles out of service due to lack of staffing. However, during the entirety of COVID, unlike many other fire departments, and I would almost venture to say most of the fire departments, we never took down a primary service unit such as a fire engine, a ladder truck, or a rescue squad or rescue company the entire time. And we did that without a mandatory recall requirement. This is simply because of the great dedication to service of the men and women at all levels in our organization who made sure that the people that needed care during COVID got it in the little city. Your fire department also holds an ISO or Insurance Services Office rating of 2, with 1 being the best possible score. And we are accredited by the Commission on Fire Accreditation International, CFIA, and we received our reaccreditation this past February by unanimous vote. We talk about our org chart, which is in front of you right now. Usually I start by saying there are 4 divisions and I get into the divisions, but first, the most visible change in organization since last year is the creation through reclassification of our 2nd deputy fire chief. Thanks to the city manager, our deputy city manager, and HR staff, we have provided our agency with better accountability, a better span of control, a more balanced agency, and a 2nd deputy director level employee to liaise with other city units. I introduced Chief Cole earlier, but let me once again recognize him for stepping up and engaging this brand new position. He's been doing it very, very well. Now back to the normal, we talk about the 4 divisions. We are divided into 4 divisions. The first is administration and planning, which you'll see on the far left there, which includes our small but incredibly effective facility maintenance team, which maintains those 23 facilities. Our payroll and benefits section, our warehouse and personal protective equipment logistics staff. This division also includes strategic planning and technical support. Operations is obviously the largest part and the most visible part of the organization to everyone. And includes the vast majority of our staff. The operations division is divided into 3 shifts, which operate 19 stations, 24/7, 365. This division is always on the front lines, helping ensure our community safety throughout the pandemic, and they're required to show up to work regardless of the weather. Training and safety. Our training and safety division is responsible for all of the basic training and continuing education needs, which includes EMS, as well as specialty training. They also ensure the firefighter safety and wellness. Wellness is a relatively new focus within the fire service, one I've spoken to you about last year. that I'm also proud that we're making some headway in. One area within this focus we like to highlight is the behavioral health of our members. While there's a concern year-round, the need for this type of healthcare for our firefighters was highlighted significantly after the 2019 gas explosion in our downtown. Now, one of the new tools in protecting our firefighters is the addition of a brand new member of our department and one that didn't cost an FTE. It's our second behavioral health canine, known as Blaze. Blaze will be joining us next week, actually, to assist firefighters with PTSD and related concerns. And Blaze has been assigned to Fire Station 4 at 1818 Riddle Road. You probably have met our first canine, Cosmo, who, forgive me for this, blazed the trail. Our next division is fire prevention in the fire marshal's office, and they're really focused on preventing the 911 call in the first place. If we can prevent the fire or prevent the injury, we've succeeded without ever going out the door. This division provides annual business inspections, multifamily dwelling fire inspections, new building inspections, fire investigations, as well as blasting inspections and oversight. The division also houses our public education team, who really stepped up during the pandemic to help us focus on social media and videos to help us stop or slow down common safety issues within our community. You may have seen some of their public service announcements that they produced. Probably the most notable would be kitchen fires. In the early parts of the pandemic, everyone was staying home and trying to cook. Many people can, and we found that had an incredible increase in our number of kitchen fires. So they put out a video on just that. So one other note in our org chart as far as new FTEs would be to the far right in the operational division. You'll notice there are 16 new FTEs. That's 3 captains, 3 drivers, 10 firefighters to staff a new fire company in this, which will be the first new fire company in this department since 2019. And this will make up Ladder Company 7, which will serve the north part of the city. It'll be quartered at Roxborough and Duke. It's Fire Station 7 right there. This will serve what is really an underserved area as far as Ladder Company service, is putting the right unit in the right place at the right time. There is one additional fire inspector in the fire marshal's office, which I'll talk about a little bit in more depth later on. The org chart shows 430 currently authorized with the recommended staffing of 447. So everyone knows we start every fall with 100% staffing because that's when we hire our recruit academy. We do 1 academy a year typically. And these vacancies are filled through our annual recruit. Our vacancies will rise throughout the year as we lose people due to retirements and other losses, people that go to other departments or change careers. These vacancies are filled through our annual recruit academy process. We're currently in the selection process. I believe interviews start next week. For our 2 entry-level schools, which will actually occur at the exact same time and flip-flop. One will be doing EMS training while the other does fire, and then they'll switch. That'll be the 36th and 37th recruit academies will both start in August. We'll move on to performance measures. The first is response times, and obviously response times is probably the most notable of all of the measures that we do. As you can see, for the 2nd year in a row, we have made slight improvements in both our fire and EMS response times. We're very proud of this accomplishment, considering how challenging that is to be able to improve our service while we're also growing as a city and in call volume. It's important to note that our EMS statistics also went slightly down, but the non-critical calls, which is referred to as moderate first arrival times, also include calls that are considered they don't require lights and sirens, or we don't use lights and sirens to go. So their number is really not a great measure of our service. Because we'll be moving with traffic on those calls. We move on to our next one, our fire marshal's office. Our annual fire inspections numbers are again improving, although these graphs don't show it terribly well. They're hard to see here, but I can give you the numbers. Our annual fire for FY23, there were projected 10,200. Our FY23 to date is 9,916. That's through April, which is just 10 months. And we expect to actually exceed our goals by meeting 12,000 fire inspections for the year. Our revenue build projected was 961,000. FY23 to date is 969, so we're already over our goal. And we expect to bill around 1.1 million. We move to EMS. EMS has been one of our challenging areas for us to provide great service. Durham is a unique environment where we had trained to an extremely high level, and then we had struggled to maintain that high training. The delivery and maintenance of our EMS became a focus last year, and considering the increase in our non-critical and critical EMS responses, and the long on-scene times at the time that EMS was experiencing, or EMS system was experiencing, we had to engage in a higher level of service and training to ensure that our EMS is competent and well-trained. While training hours were increased during COVID, we utilized virtual methods which weren't as effective as we had hoped that they would be. And we planned on additional hands-on training in the last quarter of the year. Last year, with the support of the city manager and the mayor and council, we were able to fund and develop 3 new positions that we refer to as EMS supervisors. These 3 captains, one for each of the 3 operational shifts, lead the continuing education of all of our sworn 414 members, as well as respond to incidents, to oversee and manage EMS operations, and to help determine future training needs. As you can see from the measure, our EMS training team has a goal of providing 66 hours per month of EMS training. That's 22 hours of training per operational shift, which is the exactly what is needed for EMTs to research without having to go through a recertification school. We're proud to be able to say that investment has paid off as our EMS program with these new EMS positions. They've done exactly what we needed them to do and have exceeded our expectations. We still have a ways to go to being the department that we want to be as far as EMS is concerned, but we're getting clearly better every single day. The second measure there to the right is percent of QA/QI, or what we refer to as quality assurance or quality improvement. And you'll hear us use the terms QA/QI. If you remember last year, it was near impossible for us to provide that level of oversight. To conduct a level of oversight, we just didn't have the people or the training to be able to do it. But I can say that the investment in our EMS supervisors and through the great work of our EMS team, who was led by Battalion Chief Tina Hamlin, and the QA/QI program, which is managed by Battalion Chief Don White, they have certainly turned this program around, and you can see we're hitting 100% of high acuity calls, and those are the most severe EMS calls, and we're looking at oversight on them 100% of the time. We'll move on to the resource allocation table. 2 items of note in this table is the estimated overages in personnel and operational funding in our current fiscal year. As experienced all across our nation's fire services, it's been a difficult time to run emergency services with fire, EMS, and police members trying other occupations. Therefore, we've had to utilize overtime to keep our fire truck staffed. Operationally, vehicle maintenance and fuel have accounted for the vast majority of our overages. Additionally, personal protective equipment has experienced steady increases, I would say outrageous increases, to both the cost of PPE, but also to apparatus, which is a fleet deals with. But running a fire department has become extremely expensive throughout COVID. I'll move on to budget highlights, and there are several, and so I thank you all for that as we move forward in this process. The first is overtime. The DFD has a minimum required staffing of to staff and a minimum requirement of 24/7, 365. We have a benchmark staffing of 121. We have an absolute minimum staffing of 96 people. So there should be 96 people working at all times. And that is hard to do. Our minimum staffing is benchmarked by standard agencies of NFPA and OSHA. While we don't meet the benchmarks of 4 people, the vast majority of the time, which are established by the agency, we do meet our established benchmark, our own Durham established benchmark of 3 members per unit through the use of overtime throughout the year. This budget increase, which is a one-time allotment, will help us ensure that units are staffed appropriately to our minimum standards, so we may continue our service to the public. Our equipment replacement program is the second one on your list. It provides funding to keep our life-saving tools current and serviceable. This is a 1-year allotment, will help us keep our tools and equipment modern, operational, and ready for the 911 call. The DFD facility maintenance, master program is one part I believe will make a major difference for the fire department. In October 2022, the fire department requested that audit services conduct an audit on our ability to meet all of our taskings as far as response. They came back and reviewed the Durham Fire Department's our response times to determine if we meet our goals, and they reviewed the department and the city's plan to increase the demand on DFD services because of growth. The audit was important because factors such as increases in population, increases in construction, changing city demographics, and risk as new residents move into the city can impact emergency response times and overall service delivery. As a result of this review, the audit department reported that a more robust analysis is needed. And to quote them, the Durham Fire Department should incorporate the impact of future growth on service delivery in their And this, I'm sorry, should impact the impact of future growth on service delivery. And this provides funding for an analytical tool to do just that. This funding will allow the DFP to purchase, train on, and use a response modeling tool that will help us better forecast service demand and challenges, as well as improve the deployment of current resources and provide insight into future resource needs and station location. Now, one of those resource needs and station location I mentioned earlier, but I do want to highlight this, which is the staffing for the north side ladder truck. I touched on it earlier, but I do want to go to it in a little bit of depth. These are the required positions to staff that north side ladder company that will serve as an aerial apparatus for the northern end of the city, which currently has inadequate ladder coverage. With the addition of these positions and the accompanying apparatus, which was submitted in the CIP, expected response force times will improve by up to 7 minutes for emergencies in the north side of the city requiring truck company operations or a ladder truck. Based on the data as of January 2023, this new company should be housed at Fire Station 7, located at 3919 North Duke Street. This company would provide improved service to the properties in the city and county located north of I-85 through the county line with Zoldos County, west of Station 7 through to the county line with Orange County, and east of Station 7 through the old Oxford Road area. This area will improve performance service delivery throughout all of Durham, as all structure fires require at least 2 ladder companies. So any addition to the fleet allows us to be able to flex much better for responses across the city. Your next budget highlight is a training budget request. This request will help partially restore funding that was lost during COVID. This funding will assist the fire department in training its 414 sworn personnel in firefighting, EMS, and special operations and other related fields. It'll also help ensure that our fire inspectors and arson investigators receive the annual continuing education classes that are needed to maintain their certifications. And lastly, the new fire inspectors, we are receiving 1 new fire inspector, funding for 1 new FTE as a fire inspector, which will help us meet state required inspections. NC Fire Code requires by law routine inspections of all commercial multifamily dwellings. The city fire department's 13 fire inspectors conducted 11,455 inspections in FY22. We're required to inspect 15,732, so there's a bit of a delta there. We have added all sorts of operational efficiencies, but we're really at the point where additional personnel are needed. This 1 FTE will help significantly increase our capabilities by adding another 900 inspections for this year. And that concludes our budget presentation, and we're ready for any questions.
Thanks, Chief. I'm gonna ask you the same question that I asked the police chief, and that is can you tell us how you're situated and divided into in the city geographically, how that works out?
Sure. So our 19 stations are throughout the city. We like to place them in the middle of the spider web, if you will. It's hard to do. As we rebuild or look at infill stations throughout the city, we're going to try to find the best place, but often that best place is already occupied. So would we move station 1 if we could? Possibly. So that's difficult. We also are divided into 4 battalions. So each battalion has roughly 5 stations to it, and they span throughout the city. The battalions will be hard to describe without showing you a map.
Thank you,
But that's how it works.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll open it up to colleagues for questions. Anybody? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, good afternoon to the command staff as well as our bravest here in the city. We appreciate everything you do for us here in the city. I'm really heartened to hear about the north side ladder truck and bolstering our ability to protect life and property equitably throughout the city. But you know, as a layperson, when I hear ladder, you think height, and by my count, I think there are about 2 or 3 projects in the pipeline that are going to top out at 27 stories or better, which presents a different challenge. Height presents a different challenge in firefighting. But how is that factoring into our planning and in terms of fleet and just if it has training impact? Let's talk about, as we're going higher, we'll talk a little bit about our future and what we need to be looking towards to prepare ourselves.
Sure, it's a great question. Ladder trucks are needed even if it's a single-story building, because it's not the vehicle that does the work, it's the people that do the work. The people that ride a ladder company actually do a different type of work on that scene. If you remember back to the Excelsior program that we did, we actually discussed that particular thing because the Excelsior company was a hook and ladder company, which at the time was sort of special operations. It's pretty impressive. Those divisions of labor still exist today. Every station has an engine or a quint, which operates as an engine in its first due area. And what that means is they can do all basic firefighting, they stretch lines in and they extinguish the fire. That's some of the most basic work that we do. It's extremely difficult work. I'm not trying to make light of it, but it is the basics of firefighting is extinguishing fire. The ladder company and our one rescue company do pretty much everything else. That's everything from forcing doors, doing the primary search of the building, cutting the roof, opening up areas that fire may be hidden in. So all those other services are required to be done. An engine company could do them, but it is better to have that division of labor and that focus on that the ladder companies do in the city. That's why we're specifically asking for a ladder company at Station 7. There's currently a quint there. What will happen is we'll actually put a fire engine beside the quint, and the quint will become a ladder company. That's how it'll actually physically work in the short term. That'll give us the ability to have that division of labor, and so an immediate fire engine and immediate ladder truck in the north side of the city. But when we ask about the high-rise structures, to go into that second part of the question, really the ladder truck itself does very little if it's above the 8th floor or so. And what we do there, luckily for us, our high rises are relatively new. The very tall ones are. They have all of the compartmentalization that provides protection from fire. They have sprinklers, they have standpipes, they have a lot of the modern protections that allow us to do our job a lot safer. High-rise firefighting is still an extremely dangerous game and very difficult for us because as you go higher, there is so many different things. I don't want to bore everyone. I'm a fire nerd, so I like this stuff. But everything from what's called a stack effect, which the weather outside affects where the smoke is in the structure. So where you typically want to go to the top floor and make sure you rescue everyone there, it could actually be the 18th floor, not the 26th floor, where people may be most suffering from smoke. There also is wind-driven fires. When the windows vent on a high-rise structure, it changes that fire. Unbelievable. It is one of the nightmare scenarios for fire departments. So when you see some of the fires like in Philadelphia, where you'll see windows blown out and fire going horizontally through the building, those are next to impossible for us to deal with. We need to couple a large bore lines, which is something we work on, and a lot of water very quickly. In fact, some of the bigger departments have actually practiced using tarps they throw out the window to actually cover that opening because it's so dangerous. So are we there? I think it's something that we're working on. Really, the audit request actually started as a request to look at our ability to go to high-rise structures. I think any ladder company addition will help us with that. So that's why we're looking at one north and one to the east. And again, the manager in her recommended budget is provided for the north, and we're both vehicles, the actual apparatus, are in the CIP.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. And final question, and the media has asked me a lot about this, and residents and citizens as well. This address is kind of, I don't want to call it a misunderstanding, but this perception that you guys just fight fires. The majority of what you do is actually medical responses. And when you hear stories about lack of ambulances, there are some people in the community who think that that means that folk are, what's the fire department doing there?
Right.
They actually are trained EMTs. But what percentage of, and I know the goal in the department is for 100% of our firefighters to be EMT certified. Is that
We are 100% EMT.
Got you.
Yeah, so we're 100% EMT.
I wanted them to hear you say.
A vast majority of our personnel are advanced EMT, which is that was the part we were really struggling to provide, that advanced EMT, because we're the only department in the state that does it other than Greenville, and Greenville also runs their ambulance service, which makes sense. We stepped forward years ago to say we want to go to a higher level. We're there, we're struggling with it. We still provide advanced life support on our 3 squad companies. Those are the 2-person pickup trucks. If you're older and you saw the show Emergency, they're the little pickup trucks on the show Emergency, almost the same exact mission. So no, we still do that. We hear all the time, there's no one on fire, there's nothing on fire, why are you here? And that is a real question. The reason is that our service, it is about time on task for ambulances. So if an ambulance shows up to a call, they treat the patient, they assess the patient, treat the patient, transport the patient, then they need to clean the ambulance, do their paperwork, and get back in service. That whole thing could take 2 to 3 hours. If you have a bunch of ambulance calls or EMS calls, and you can quickly use up all your ambulances, even though their patient contact time may be short, the entire reflex time to get them back in service is extremely long. We don't have that exact that impact on our service. In Station 3's area, if an ambulance is needed and it is a critical call, we will be dispatched. We typically will arrive first because we're 19 stations throughout. We're gonna arrive first. We're gonna do an assessment, life-saving skills, stabilize the patient. And the ambulance usually will show up at that point, take over care of the patient and transport. We will restock right then, clean up our tools, equipment, and our people, and get right back to service. So our impact may be 10 minutes. Theirs may be 3 hours. So it's a great balanced system. And it's really just it's a value add for all the people that we serve.
Thank you for that excellent primer, and I hope a lot of folks hear what you just said, because it's, you know, the perception has been, you know, we say that you can save a life and stabilize, you just don't transport. Our fire department does not transport, and therein lies where, but you're still saving lives every day.
Absolutely. And I think the partnership between EMS and fire is what's so important. As you notice, our newer stations have EMS in the station with us. We're sharing that it is a smart way of doing business. It's a great way to use it's just a better way to do station and physical plant. But also they're right beside us all day. They're part of the team. And I think that provides better service to the patients.
Thanks, Chief. Great people and some of the best cooks in the city as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Chief, for your report today. There was one thing I didn't hear you mention, that in the fire department, that is where we house our drone pilots.
Yes, ma'am.
Most of our drone pilots are in the fire department. So just in a few brief words, if you would talk about how our drones help us
Yes, ma'am.
in the service.
Absolutely love to. So Fire Station 13 is really the headquarters of our hazardous materials team. Years ago, they decided that really one of the most effective ways for us to do reconnaissance on a hazardous materials call is not to put someone in a suit, which is dangerous, but really time consuming. It's to fly a drone downrange to take a quick look at what's going on. And now we've added some thermal imaging and some other capabilities to that, so they can see more than the human could have had we walked them downrange. They've been used by several departments throughout the city, including helping, my favorite is helping map a graveyard, which is not one of the things our pilots were trained for. But as we've shared with at the department directors meeting, we want missions because our people have to gain so many hours of training per month. This is a way for us to do something realistic that's interesting to them, which is getting the drone up in the air and actually doing it. I can tell you this, my dream, and I'd love to accomplish this, there's still some FAA regulations, is to have wait for my boss to try to shut it down. My dream of emergency response would be to fly a drone, let's say on top of Station 1, that would fly and become the first arriving battalion chief. Because they can see everything until the arrival of the first battalion chief. And that way, we're putting eyes on the scene quickly. It can do a quick 360 and get back out front and command the fire from there. And when the terrestrial chief, allow me to do that, goes up, the drone lands and gets recharged and gets sent back to Station 1. I think there's some really neat service delivery advantages to drone use. The problem is we currently don't have the certificate to fly non-line of sight. So it's something we want to work to. As far as our pilots are concerned, we're actually a self-certifying agency, which is a huge deal. We are limited somewhat in the very southeast because of the airport, but even that, for emergency operations, we can contact the airport and get permission to fly. But the drone program has been amazing. Really, the first time you saw us use it was after the gas explosion. And there's some incredible footage of the actual damage that, as a chief, it was excellent to see. But I can give you one scene where the drone has made a major difference in our operations. Washington Duke Inn had a roof fire probably 3 years ago. The drone team was relatively new. And we had firefighters on the roof, which we believed was a slate roof that was wet because we were spraying water on it. Slate and water are very bad for extraction and extremely dangerous for firefighters. And so we were saying,
Right over there.
exactly, and that was our concern. So we said, don't get on the roof, don't get on the roof, don't get on the roof. Well, the firefighters, the captains kept saying, it's completely safe, we're on flat ground. Well, we could see that wasn't the case. We finally got the drone up in the air because 13 had a little bit of a distance to get there and showed there was actually a walkway in the middle of the roof that we couldn't see. And we were making bad decisions based on bad intelligence. And so the drones in that particular fire allowed us to be much more aggressive about the firefighting because we could get underneath that roof perfectly safely. So the drone program has been great. Madam Manager, thanks for letting us talk about that. It is available to all of the city departments, and we've done everything from, I believe, we've run some gas lines, we've done some other things, and it's been or utility lines. And it's been a pretty excellent program, and our people are getting a really valuable experience based on it.
About search and rescue as well. We've had a couple of.
Yeah, yes, sir. We have been asked by the sheriff's office to do wide area searches, and we've done several of those. The interesting part about that is the thermal imaging camera at night is really night and day type of vision. You can just get an inkling of somebody out there. Now, we are seeing animals and we're seeing other things that are happening out there, but the human shape, and it is vivid on the screen in color, based on their heat. We found several people, we have been part of many searches to clear areas. The one person we found had just been located by a ground crew, but our people saw it before the ground crew got to them. So we know the technology works. We don't have a ton of open space like that, but the problem is if you lose a child in that space, it could be fatal pretty quickly due to exposure. So we want to get there quickly. The sheriff's office is in charge of those wide area searches, and we've been able to help them multiple times. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Have that vision, it's visionary stuff. I love it.
Thanks, man.
2 questions. Can you just speak to your, strategic plan around diversity in recruitment?
Sure. It's a challenge right now because the work we were doing previously was highly effective at bringing in recruits, and we were improving our diversity numbers. Now, the numbers are just not there as they were before. We saw a bump this year, back up a little bit higher, and so we're happy about that. But we're trying some really interesting things. Some things brought us some candidates, some did not. The Mayor Pro Tem knows we did a church tour, and we started it in March of 2020, which, as you know, stopped in March of 2020 because that's when COVID hit, and it slowed us down immensely. But we do recruit at NCCU. We actually do which is an student athlete seminar. And we sell the concept of, you may be done with your athletics here, join our team. And we actually bring out a lot of our former athletes or current athletes that are in the department. We have an amazing amount of previous athletes in the department, from different type of professional levels to collegiate athletes. There's a lot. It's an athletic job. And we do have, there probably is not a sport represented that we didn't have somebody in some high level. So that's some of the focus. We focus our recruitment in Durham. That's what we do. We do know that out of I believe we have 100 and about 20 scheduled for interviews next week. 100 are from North Carolina. So we don't put a lot of effort outside of the state because we can get what we need here. But all of our recruitment is focused in the city because we know Durhamites will actually they know the community, they know the people, they know when they drive down the street, something looks wrong. Hey, that's usually closed, or that door is usually open, or hey, there's a coffee smell in the downtown in certain areas all the time. Well, they would know that's normal, but if they smell a burning smell in the same area, it's probably not normal. We know that recruiting locally works. It's really difficult recruitment period right now. It's across every job, as you know. But we were successful prior to seeing the numbers drop, and I believe we'll get back on that and probably searching positive numbers next year, the year after.
Yeah, well, I know like when they're graduating from high school, they're not the age, I think they have to be 19 or what is it?
We actually we can take them right out of high school.
Okay.
We moved our hiring date, which used to be in May, to June, or the process through June, so that we would get more high school and college graduates. So we actually learned that because we had a person in it who said, well, actually, I don't graduate till mid-June. I can't start recruit school in June. And then it was a light bulb going off. Of course not. Yes, graduate first, come see us next year. But now we can take graduates to either college or the high school level straight into our program. And we would start typically in July. I think this year we have to start in August for a technical reason. Our biggest delay in starting recruit school is based on PPE. We have to size them and get their personal protective equipment, the firefighting gear in, and that's a 90-day or so. And that's at their fastest. And typically like replacement gear takes months. Taking it up to a year now. Yeah, replacement gear. They rush us on a recruit school, on our recruit academy purchase because we're purchasing 24, or this year, maybe up to 60 sets at once.
Yeah, I think the reason why I talked about high school is that we're seeing at a higher ed level that a lot of people are just not going to pursue a higher level education.
Right.
So I would definitely continue to try to hit those high schools. And the other question, what we've been talking about for the last couple of meetings about the step situation in the, your department. I just was wondering, Has that caused any morale situations in terms of, the firefighters not feeling like they're getting their steps? I just wanted to hear it from your perspective.
Yes, ma'am, of course. The current compensation discussion to me is about two things, which is retention and respect. The first is retention of our members. The second is the respect of those that, and I can share, we've met with the union, we know how they feel. And I think the feel of a lot of members is, hey, we stepped up heavy during COVID. And I think when a lot of people were able to stay at home, they couldn't. We have no tolerance for not showing up to work, because if you don't show up to work, a fire truck doesn't get staffed, and that's a big deal to us. And so I know, so I share those two things, retention and respect. Retention is what I need, or I'm sorry, what we need to focus on to, and that for people who may leave us for pay and benefits. Respect is really that long-term or long haul for people that came to work each and every day through the pandemic. And so those are the two things. Is it morale? Absolutely. It's, we're trying to build a department that does great things at all times for everyone in the community, and we're in the middle of doing that. But at the same time, I think our members do feel left out. And it's a challenge. We recently lost 5 members to carry, and that hurt. And I conducted an exit interview on each and every one, and I was hoping to find that nugget of what we can do that isn't paying benefits to make their lives better. One of our members left, stayed, and he actually said, "Chief, you guys are doing everything you can to keep us here. We have changed our uniform policies. We've changed our grooming policies to be more inclusive, to try to keep more people here." But at the end of the discussion, he said it's simply about pay and benefits. And so that is really the challenge. We pride ourselves on training in aggressive firefighting. And in short, or for lack of a better term, we try to sell cool. I think we've talked about that before. We try to get great people, great gear, great fire trucks, and to do great service. But we've done cool pretty well, but the market forces are overwhelmed our cool factor. And that's the reason people like to work in Durham, is you get to use your skills, you get to help people. No one wants to be a firefighter in Bedrock where you just never help people, because you really train hard and you want to be able to help people when they're in need. I believe the step plan is a great step, toward the respect part of the equation, but I don't believe it's going to be a major help for us for retention. I think the retention, simply put, is about getting us to market. The step plan won't help the people at the lowest levels because they didn't miss any steps. And we did look at the people that we've lost in the past 2 years. In 2022, the average time in service was 4.17 years. And in 2023, so far, the average is 4.04 years. So we really need to focus our money to getting to market. And that's why we're so excited the manager has a market study next year. I believe a market study done aggressively and then turned around quickly and provided that relief to our employees will make the biggest difference that we possibly can do. It's just hard to hire firefighters, but it's harder when there's options out there for our firefighters, and we train them the best. They get great in-service training. They get to actually do the job a lot, and that makes our people very attractive to take to other places.
And I've been told you have a lot of, you allow them to get a lot of certificates that they then go and take, some of the lessons. I know you said you lost 5 to carry,
Yes,
right? I mean, I probably need to make a visit to carry. I'm only kidding. But what's the salary there? I'm just curious.
Yes, ma'am. Their lateral salary. So there's 2 different types of salaries. There is a starting entry-level salary. And that's what you pay someone who straight out of high school has never been a firefighter. And then there's laterals. And so what a lot of departments are doing right now, and we used to be the kings of this in the state, is poaching other people's firefighters. People wanted to come here because they were going to get to use their skills. And like I said, the pool factor was extremely high for Durham. Cary has a lateral hiring at 51,838. And the challenge for us is you couple that with some of their really impressive benefit programs like the Cary My Way, which is one of the things one of our exit interviews talked about. It's a lot to try to make up.
What is it like?
Cary has a new program called My Way, which gives the employee, I think it's $3,500 to do different things at different stages of their life. So for example, it can be used for childcare, it can be used for equipment for firefighting, it can be used for education. And these are things we do lag behind in, including the educational allotment for our employees. So these are things that those members mentioned. Now, pay was number 1, But two of them really got into the benefits part. They were two of the older members that were leaving us, older of the group. They were still very young in the department, but the benefits, I think the Mayor Pro Tem mentioned either today or yesterday about that we were the leader in benefits, and we used to sell that point. But there are other places that have passed it. To be fair to the city, it's an arms race of sorts. Last January, we upped our salaries significantly, and we were leaders in the region. And all the others have passed us, but they've also tried some other things as well. So like I said, our vacancies still aren't staggeringly high, but we want to retain our people. The people that are currently serving are who we want to be the captains of the future, to be the fire chiefs of the future, and we want to keep them here.
I just want to say thank you for that information, and also thank you, when I'm meeting with the firefighters, they always talk about you hear them.
Yes, ma'am.
And I appreciate you hearing them and fighting for them. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Councilman Javier.
Thank you for the great presentation. Just really quickly, are you all recruits, since you have lowered, or not lowered the age, but aligned it better with the high school schedule? Most of our high schools run ROTC programs. And so I was just curious about that.
Sure.
And then also, do you all, I forget what the test ASVAB or whatever, the high school kids who are forced into, right? So I will say, like, right now, I guess my kid did well, and so now she's literally being harassed by the armed forces. I think that there's probably, I don't know if we're allowed to have access like that, but I think that there are opportunities within our high schools. To Councilmember Hyman's point, I have 3 kids, maybe one is interested in a 4-year institution. A lot of the kids, especially when you're thinking about the debt you're gonna take on nowadays, there is a lot more interest in trades and more active things. And so I hope we're really capitalizing on our high school students in Durham.
Sure, to a point we are. That trend is true. The going into a trade or going into a job that'll provide for your education are really some of the biggest pathways. We'd like to be that. It is difficult to be that compared to some other jobs, especially the military, that provides really a very smooth pathway to get your degree. We do have Northern High School does have sort of a fire ROTC program of sorts. It's something we have not been able to really maximize into a pipeline yet. And it's just difficult. We've looked at some ways, can we make it a direct pathway to us? For example, can they skip the written and the practical test? Because they've already done those things in high school. We just haven't gotten very far on that. Right now, we don't do the best job we can, but there are so many hurdles in the way, and plus it's the county agency as well. So there isn't that. Everything has to be an agreement between the two and so forth. We encourage all of their people. We have spoken there. I think I've spoken to their class 2 or 3 times and said, hey, this is the opportunity. Come to us. We are going to take great care of you. You're going to be one of the best firefighters in the state by working for us. You're going to get to go and help people. We do make that plea, but we don't have a direct pathway or pipeline yet.
Thank you. And then just really quickly, really interesting, Southern has a drone operator program. I think some of us got to see it in April. So I'm just, I at the time was like, remember, we need drone operators for the city of Durham. So.
We do, and it's one of the jobs where you can go use that skill pretty quickly. It's amazing how much, how much drones have taken off. I'm sorry, I cannot stop on that. It really has, and the fact that, emergency services are using it everywhere is pretty impressive. But it has changed how we do business. It really has. On the hazmat side, and I should have drawn this out a little bit more earlier, but the drone can go downrange right beside the tank, and because of its thermal imaging, we can see where the level of the chemical is in the tank if there's any sort of change in the temperature between the actual chemical and the airspace inside there. It's an amazing capability, and we're using it more and more and more as we move through. I wish I was actually much younger in the fire service and could be part of that technology growing, but it's really just starting to take form.
Thank you.
I just wanted to also say, I think Mayor Pro Tem could probably speak to this with me. When we were growing up in the inner city, like the fire, they used to come to our schools. You remember back in the day, they would come and like you wanted to be a firefighter or you wanted to be a police officer. Like that's just what you back in the
Sure.
So I think we also have to kind of go back to that and start even younger than high school. And I don't know if you're doing anything like that, but that's what I remember. growing up
Yeah.
in the city.
There is a few technical things here. The county, the schools are actually inspected and they're part of the fire marshal, the county fire marshal's office. But we do provide the public education for that. Our staff is small for that, but very effective. We are in most of it. I can tell you this, that's what got me. I mean, I was excited every time a fire truck showed
And
up.
it used to be like a dog, a fire dog or something like that, that used to come around to the school. I don't know what his name was, but I remember that, and I'll be 58 this year, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Sparky still makes appearances to all of our
Okay,
things.
we gotta bring Sparky back out.
Yeah.
And jazz him up a little bit and get him out there. Thank you.
Yes, so we do, but no, that's a good point. I think, you know, in a tech world, the fire service seems very low tech to most people. But to the drone points and to the other things that we do, tech is part of every single piece that we do. You know, if you look at, there was an active shooter response a couple days ago that luckily there was no real substance to the call. If you would see the tech that was being used to plan our response, if we had found an actual active shooter operation, it's impressive, and we're getting more and more of that every day. So I think you can really be into tech and do the firefighting part. And we're looking for that. We're looking for the very smart athlete, you know, or somebody who knows how to use their body well. Doesn't have to be a team athletics, but we are a team sport. It's the one difference between us and a lot of other jobs is that you go to work with a team every single day until you make the chief ranks, and then you are on your own as a battalion chief sometimes because if you're in the car by yourself. But we're a team sport. We try to push that a lot, and that is relatively effective in improvement.
Thanks.
That's right.
Councilman.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief, for your presentation. Also wanted to thank you for just seamlessly being a part of this first responders response culture that we have in Durham. How many, again, officer staff do you have total?
430 authorized staff current.
All right, in the last fiscal year, how many have you lost?
Well, our current vacancies right now is 36 counting civilian and uniform. That's 30 operational uniform vacancies and 5 civilian.
And how many have you lost to pay and benefits as a reason?
We actually go through and in either an exit interview or in their letter, we can get from that where they went to or the reasons why. Let me pull that up. I think I can answer some of that for you. We actually put it in 3 categories. And I'll start in 2021. The first category is those that left us to other fire departments. The second category is those that left us to go to other fields. And the third, those left us really for family or relocation reasons that we can't stop. In 2021, we lost 5 to competing fire departments. We lost 5 to other fields and 1 left the area. And these are people who left the department by choice. This is not medical retirements, dismissals for disciplinary reasons, or line of duty deaths. In FY22, I'm sorry, these are calendar years. So in calendar year 22, we lost 6 to other competing fire departments, 3 to other fields, and 3 that left the area. And so far in 23, we had 7 that left the fire department to go to other competing fire departments, 5 that have left to go to other fields, and 4 that have left the area. So we have a higher number this year than previously. But they also went up in people that chose other fields as well.
Actually, how many do you have coming in the next academy?
We're aiming at a recruit academy of 60 with 2 recycles. Those are people that got hurt in the last school and didn't graduate, but we kept them on. So 62 is what we're expecting. Our numbers are not as high as we hoped coming into the process, but they're not as high as we hope, but better than expected, if that makes any sense. And we have 100 and some, I think near 120 that are being interviewed starting next week. So we believe we'll be able to get the numbers, but we want to hire good staff. So we may not be able to fill 60 spots. I think we can, but I'm not sure.
Thank you very much.
That's right.
Any other questions from our chief? Thank you, Chief. I couldn't keep up when you were running your numbers. I was just asking if you could share those afterwards around the runs.
Oh, yeah, yes, sir, of course.
And then
The response numbers.
yeah, and then also I didn't catch your required inspections numbers as well. And,
Yes,
and if I could get that, and then, the audit specifically, I might have missed the report, but I didn't see an audit.
okay, so, yes, ma'am, there was an audit report that was issued, I don't remember when it was issued. Yeah, we can send you a link to that report.
Definitely.
It was originally requested to examine our ability to respond to high-rise structures. There was a NIST study, that was actually, that went out 5 years ago on high-rise structure responses. I ended up going to it, being part of it at the time. It was done in the DC region. It had some really unique, outcomes there about the impact of high-rise firefighting and how difficult it is. And so our audit, our request was, hey, are we ready for this? And if not, what can we do better? Fire chiefs want a firehouse in every corner. That's not practical. So we really wanted that exterior look at how can we do this better? The high-rise study is actually a really, and again, I'm a fire nerd, I get it, but it's an interesting study because there's so many different factors on just getting to the scene. If you remember, before the towers were taken down on 9/11, New York City put a firehouse directly across the street from the tower so they can minimize response times and just worry about vertical response. Our station 1 is very close to the downtown, so there's not a lot of vertical response time. But even if you put us in the lobby of a lot of high rises, we can't make our NFPA required times because of how long it takes to get up to those upper floors.
Yeah.
So the challenge is, how do we do that? We either park people inside the building, which is impractical, or we figure out other ways to be more efficient when we're inside, or we send larger responses. Currently, we're sending larger responses based on the fact that we can get more people in the building quickly and make a major difference. I would say a high-rise fire is the one, other than fires under construction, that we want to aggressively attack as fast as possible because of how fast they can get out of control.
Thank you. And I would say that I am very excited about the Station 7.
Letter 7. Okay.
And just acknowledging that the Northern Durham, as we urbanize and suburbanize more of that area, there's gonna need to be a really huge assessment. Just acknowledging how the roads don't connect in the same way. And so I'm very concerned. I am trusting that the new technology you mentioned or the new software that you mentioned will be helpful in that, but I didn't know exactly what it was or.
So to give a good look at it, Charlotte Fire used it really effectively. They have 2 rescue companies for their city, which obviously is much larger. They had an imbalance between the response times and the response quantity of calls for their 2 rescues. They used one of the 3. We're looking at 3 different vendors. One of the 3 actually they engaged and they actually found a better place, which is not where the department expected to put that unit. And after it, I think they have a year of data post move. They balance their numbers and they balance their response times, which is it's the best way to provide that service. Especially when you're looking at unique services, ladder company service, our squads, our rescue company, where our chiefs go. All of that can be balanced using tools like that. I have some experience using them in my previous agency. I'm really looking forward to doing it here. Plus, it also helps us find the right place for that next fire station. We have pretty good feelings of where that middle of the spider web is, but this takes both previous call volumes, so where all the calls were and when they happened, predictable growth, and then it puts all that together to provide us with good fire response model. I'm really looking forward to us being able to utilize that. To also, I think it'll confirm most of our decisions are strong, and we've made them on great data. But I think this will bring another level of professionalism that we're trying to, or the next higher level of professionalism for us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I would also add in your visioning, I'm not sure how it might land or where it might land, but it would be nice to know what it looks like to kind of coalesce around EMS and fire with a helicopter and where helipads can land throughout the city and the county. Just noting that that's.
I'm hearing I'm getting a helicopter. I'm not sure that's what you're saying. I wanted to make sure that's not, because I was excited. The manager's going to handle that for you. That actually, in an urban environment, having a place to put down a helicopter from medevac is difficult. Luckily, Duke runs one relatively in the middle of our jurisdiction, but you got to get there. And so you don't see a lot. In fact, I can't remember one of us flying someone out because we're so close to it and to a trauma center. Other jurisdictions, though, that is a major concern, especially as they urbanize, if they don't have a trauma center. We luckily have Duke right in the middle. But no, it's a challenge. You know, we're getting to the urbanization where our highways are going to become more problematic that way. And it's just not, you typically can still get to the hospital in about 10 minutes, but those are 10 hard minutes. And so, yeah, I think it's probably something we probably need to start examining as we get denser and denser. How do we get to hospital fast?
When you're looking at that vendor, just make sure that they have that capability.
Yes, ma'am.
To forward past that for us, get that helicopter.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
That's the question.
Councilman.
Yeah, we're, regarding, the diversity in your staff, are you and I'm not talking about just race or ethnicity, but, language ability? Do you have someone that can, I think there was request for a, Spanish speaking inspector.
Sure.
That's not this department? Okay. Gotcha.
Well, it's still, you know, the language line and having the ability to translate immediately in hand is important to the fire department. And we want, you know, as many bilingual or trilingual people as we can possibly get, because the delay is really problematic when we're treating a patient. Fires and other mechanical things that we can see and we can operate with and learn from what's happening. But a patient you have to talk to. And if you're not getting good information from the patient because you're not understanding what they're saying, that's why the language line is used a lot by our personnel and EMS for that exact reason. But it's not the same as having someone who speaks that language. That's something we'd love to have. Yes.
Thank you for your response. I asked you a question that was actually being requested from another department, but it's good to hear that you have that as well.
It is. I mean, it's something I think that the city does reward people that have that ability to speak additional languages. It's huge emergency services. I would think probably police is just as important, or maybe even more important, because they probably have less time to try to figure out what's going on than we do. A lot of what we do is based on physical assessment of the patient, but a lot of the medical emergencies, you have to get that history from them. What did they just eat? What did they just take? Have they not taken their meds? Have they taken too much of their meds and those sort of things? And without the ability to communicate, it is a real challenge.
Thank you.
A quick question.
My question for the manager, and, just specifically, just trying to figure out what it will look like. What it would look like to try and address that question that, Councilmember Holterheimer mentioned around the salaries. And just, just their thoughts and what your game plan looks like for this year, coming year, whatever, that is, I heard a little bit from Chief. But I'd love to make sure.
Thank you very much. I think that is what we really covered yesterday, but I will speak to it again today. So we actually are planning in the proposed budget, as in front of you, there's $400,000 allocation to do a pay and classification and market study for all of our employees. That includes all public safety employees, as well as all our general employees. So that is included in the budget. Also included in this budget is a market adjustment proposed that is approximately 2%, but not approximately. It is 2% for everyone, plus a range of additional pay that would be dependent upon the pay plan between 4% and 6%. So all employees at a minimum at its base pay in the upcoming proposed budget would receive an increase of at least 6% and some 8%. So that is what is proposed. I don't know if you have additional questions.
It would just be to Chief Zoldos to say if that would cover some of that need in the department.
Well, absolutely. What I stated before was, a study that's aggressively done and turned around quickly, I think will help stem that tide, because I think our people will hear, hey, you're all making that a quick attempt to get us to market. Our move is to get us to market. That's a relatively simple look at, when we look at the other jurisdictions around us, where are we at with it? And the people that we're losing are clear indications of that. 4 of those 5, I can tell you this, are homesick today because they don't work here, but they left for the month. And again, it isn't 100% of our people are leaving. It's a small number, but it is smarter to retain than it is to hire. And I think what the managers is proposing is a step in the right direction to that. Because we want to get the money to the lowest firefighter steps and ranks, because that's who's leaving us. And I think a market adjustment is the fastest, probably safest and most simple way to do that. And that'll keep our people here.
Thank you, that's awesome.
So one of the things I did not mention, though, that would be part of this study, and I think Robin mentioned it yesterday as well, is as the chief has spoken here, different municipalities or different organizations implement different types of incentives. Also included in our plans would be to enhance some of our educational incentives to help people get to different levels of training or education. We also are going to be looking at the other types of incentives that organizations offer. You know, one of the things that the city of Durham offers is 12 weeks of paid parental leave. And I'm certain that some municipalities don't offer that and everybody doesn't need it. But when you start looking at what attracts employees to your organization, you have to look at how, what makes up your organization, how those changes have occurred over several years, and, right size, make sure that we are aligning what we offer, whether it be, incentives that are monetary or other types of incentives that are important to families, the families and the employees that we have. So all of that will be included in what we will be doing in the upcoming budget year. And it's going to start as soon as July, if it is included in the budget dollars.
And I'm assuming that carries my way.
Yeah, my ways.
Would be one of those options that you would include as well, like.
We when you say assume, you would include that as well. We're gonna look at what is there, and we will be bringing all kinds of possibilities to this organization, but we certainly heard that.
Thank you.
We did provide all of those, the ones we felt were competing with us to HR. So they have those to be able to examine. I believe there are 9 different pieces to that.
Well, Chief, I am always continually amazed by how complex our fighting is, and we thank you for being a great chief here in Durham, and I'm sure a excellent chief for the state to follow. An example of what you've shown with you and your staff. We thank you for all that you do. I don't know if there's ever enough money that we could pay you all for what you do, but we're certainly looking at it.
Yes,
We're
ma'am.
gonna try. to
I appreciate it. Our men and women definitely deserve it. And like I said, I want them to be paid what the region does, because that keeps our great people here. And we're gonna make that complexity of the fire department much less for you on June 15, because I hear you're gonna ride along with me all day.
I ain't.
So part ready, gas up, we'll go do it.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much for being here, and your great staff. We appreciate each and every one of you. Okay, everybody, we're gonna take about 10-minute break and we'll come back for our last presentation, for the